This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in and downloading the latest edition of the Two Bad Hombres podcast. And this podcast is brought to you by The Athletic, premium coverage for passionate Detroit sports fans. Listeners to this podcast can save 20% off the first year of an annual subscription by visiting theathletic.com/DSP. Don't miss out on in-depth features, great coverage, a great Detroit sports website. If you want to subscribe and save for your first year and you want to save 20% off, visit theathletic.com/DSP.
I was trying to get it how I live. I want them dead presidents. I want to pull up, head spin, get it, get fly. I got 6 jobs, I don't get tired. I don't get tired. I don't get tired.
And we are still not tired on this week's episode of Two Bad Hombres. I am your host, Vito Geronimo Trick, alongside my usual sidekick and broadcast partner in fun. That is Doc from Doc and Jock, John Charles Macaroon. John, how are you doing?
Vito, what's happening, my friend? I'm looking forward to the weekend. I think, though, this time, starting the podcast, I do got a beef with you.
Sure.
You and Nick got a chance to go out to Pontiac, a place that I cut my teeth in when I was 21 years old, a place where, if you guys out there listening remember Tiki Bob's and the place next door, I forget.
Let me say, Club Tonic?
That's what it was.
Did you go to Club Tonic? I went to Club Tonic once. I'll talk about that story.
Me and my boy Phil would go out to Tiki Bob's when they would have like free sandwiches, like 9 o'clock or so on a Saturday night when we were 21, 22, and we would have a good time. And the crowning achievement, I think one of the last times I really went out to the bar like that as a youthful soul like you do, was when Girls Gone Wild came and did some shooting.
Oh, you were there. I know. You were there. Were you in the videos?
No.
Better look it up. You probably were in the background. I'm saying in the background of the video. You got your face in there probably.
Listen, they were shooting. I don't know exactly if they were doing it for a DVD or some kind of maybe website stuff, but it was back in the day before all social media.
That's a long time ago now.
Yeah, it was a Girls Gone Wild special, and I was part of it. Me and my boy Phil had a good time. One day I'm going to bring Phil in here and let you meet him, and we can share stories back in the day of when we were clubbing. But I got a chance last weekend to kind of scroll the internet and scroll through Snapchat and the various social media platforms that I go in, and I saw you. Hanging out at Pontiac, not describing anything. You kind of were playing a game going,
we're just
what was going on? Like, I'm not sure who I'm seeing. It seemed like it was like a bar concert venue kind of thing. What'd you guys do? Another event you did not invite me to. What was it?
Correct. Another event that Doc was not invited to that I participated in was at the Crowfoot last Friday in Pontiac, and I saw Newfound Glory. Have you heard of Newfound Glory?
No.
Thing is, I'm not even a big Newfound Glory NFG fan, the acronym for it, and went out with Nick, my buddy Nick. You've heard about him ad nauseum way too many times here on Two Bad Hombres. And we had a stellar time, though, actually. We were just bonding, laughing, enjoying the music, vibing off of one another. We had some great pizza after. The drinks were flowing at the bar. It's like a bar and venue for bands. And Newfound Glory, once again, was there. To lead off was William Ryan Key, the former lead singer of Yellowcard, another alternative like rock group that was really big at one point that I listened to. Doc has no idea what I'm talking about. It's like foreign to him. But a few good groups, and I enjoyed myself. Good music, good vibes, good times at the Crowfoot in Pontiac last Friday.
So how would you review the Crowfoot? A good venue to be able to sit and listen to music to and have a cocktail and hang out and have a good time?
Yeah, enough space. A smaller venue, by the way. Now, it's not a hole in the wall, per se, and they have like 2 different bars, and one bar's right there on the side of the concert floor, really right in front of the band when they're performing. So that's really cool. You can just go and get beers all night long. I mean, people like that. I didn't drink like that, but I have. Like, I've been there before. I was there one other time, and the thing is, this is funny, too. Nick and I and like 2 other buddies, and then like his girl at the time, Nick's girl at the time, we were there, and she drove us. She wanted to kill us by the end of the night. I'll just tell you that much. Nick can tell you probably even more details and really elaborate and maybe exaggerate and make it sound really interesting. But our teacher and Nick's former boss, too, at Detroit Mercy, was there. And she came to watch this friend of ours. So we were kind of rowdy, and like I was dancing in the back, and she saw me. She was getting a kick out of me, man. I was just dancing and living it up, and we all lived it up. And this girl that Nick was kind of dating, kind of seeing at the time, drove us home, and trust me, she wanted to kill us. Let me just say that. So we enjoyed ourselves, but probably a little bit too much that night. And at least we were in college back then. We were in college, so that's our excuse.
So it was a good time. You'd recommend going to the Crowfoot if you want to hang out. Since someone my age, go out to a place like that?
Well, you have these band followers that are even older than you. I mean, you're not that old, even though I joke around about it all the time that you're 40, 50. I don't even know what you are, almost 40. But no, you could go and enjoy a band and a cocktail or two and have a really good time. You could come out with us maybe the next time, but you don't get into the music, so you can't be slighted right now. Like, you don't even know what Newfound Glory. You're like, what the hell is that? Probably.
No, I'm just teasing with you, Vito. I just saw it on social media, so I wanted to bring it up.
Snapchat.
Yeah. I saw Snapchat, and I thought that you guys had a good time, and it was something to talk about because it brought back memories for me. So thank you for that. Pontiac was always a fun place to hang out and have a good time back in the day. So it's kind of funny seeing you now go through it at the same time.
Yeah. So wait, you went to Club Tonic, by the way, to bring that up again, which is closed down now. Nick and I went once, but I don't know if you have a story, but I have a story about that.
It was a little bit hoity-toity at the time when I went there. So it was Tiki Bob's was more affordable for us young cats, and that's where I went mostly down that avenue down in Pontiac, downtown Pontiac.
So downtown Pontiac. Nick and I, we went to Club Tonic one time, and we would always joke around with this one individual from high school that we went to high school with. He played on the basketball team at De La Salle. I'll give a shout out to him. His name, Sterling Johnson. We would always joke around with it. I know it's Sterling Johnson. That's his name.
There's a real Sterling Johnson? I think that's a great pseudo nickname for you.
For me?
I'm Sterling Johnson.
I'm Sterling Johnson. Right?
Sterling
there we
Johnson.
Go. So this guy would go to Club Tonic like even when he was in high school and would brag about it. Oh, it's so great. And like because he was underage and he was going to this club and he thought it was great. There were dancers there. So you would have liked it. I don't know if you were there like you had said before, but so he would have a bunch of fun and he always kind of teased us about going. We never went until this one time like in the fall, like around Halloween. We went one time, man, and Nick and I, we didn't like have a great time, but it was funny seeing all the characters, man. A cast of characters in downtown Pontiac. And we saw these girls dance. There were dancers. And one of these girls, Doc, listen to this. One of these girls that was dancing went to grade school with us. We hadn't seen her like since. And she was a dancer there, man. How about that? I mean, I don't know if you've ever had that experience. You probably have, and not a lot of people like us do, right? Where you see a grade school girl dancing, then at a club you go to like 15, 20 years later. But literally, we hadn't seen this girl in probably 12 to 15 years, let's say. And then she's dancing at Club Tonic. And we saw her. It was just crazy stuff. And that was our one time there, and we didn't go back because we didn't want to go back. But I thought it was just funny bringing up that we actually tried it out downtown Pontiac. It was like freezing cold in the fall, like around Halloween time. And we saw this girl that went to grade school with us at St. Thecla.
Man, Vito, I like it. I tweeted out on the latest two Bad Hombres, Vito's entertainment name may be changed to Sterling Johnson.
I love it. Well, gotta have Johnson in the last name. There we go.
Sterling Johnson.
Big Sterling. Or Sterling Big Johnson. Anyways,
all right, Vito.
Let's get our heads out of the gutter, right? And move on here.
Fun times. But
yes, sir.
I was disappointed on Tuesday to survey the landscape and to check out the internet and to find out that Miss America has decided that no longer is it going to be really recognized as a beauty pageant. No longer are they going to allow women to be judged by their beauty. No longer are they going to have the swimsuit competition. And I reacted to that really strongly in that I'm opposed to that decision because of the fact that the Miss America pageant is a beauty pageant, and it's not something where men are gawking at women. It's not something where women are being exploited. Here's the thing. It's a contest that features all aspects of a woman. And why not honor an aspect that's really important as well? As part of the competition is beauty. Now, you can adjust the rating scales and maybe say, we're going to evaluate the community service that she does more. We're going to honor and value her answers to the questions more. But beauty should always be, in terms of a beauty pageant, part of it. And it just screams to, again, the country becoming way too political. And it's something where we're changing the rules of things that have been staples. And here's what I fear is going to happen. These women were able to get scholarships if they participated in these pageants and they won. And so if they take out a significant portion of the reason why people watch, then it won't be on television. And if the ratings aren't good and it dips because of this, then it will be off network television. And then what will eventually happen is there will be no contest. So I would say if you want to create a new genre of a different competition, an intellectual competition, that's fine. But don't take away a niche thing that is also positive for women. I'm tired of viewing beauty contests or men that watch to seek contests based on women's beauty as being a bad thing, because women at the same time can be empowered to take care of themselves, to get dolled up, to make themselves as fit as possible. What's wrong with espousing those kind of virtues, or should we espouse this virtue? You know what? Go out there and go to eat every fast food you want and be whatever you want and be unhealthy, and let's not worry about beauty.
But some of those women aren't even healthy too. We know that are too thin, are right?
There
really
are
thin, are anorexic, aren't eating properly, aren't eating enough. So there are those type of women too that they would come back at you and say that. Some people at least, Doc.
But don't you think, by and large, that there has been really no significant harm by participating in a beauty pageant? If you're going down into that world, if you're a willing participant, then you should be able to participate in these activities. And here's the weird part, okay? It's only the Miss America pageant that's making these changes. So if you want to be Miss Michigan, you're still going to have to put on a bathing suit. You're still going to have to wear an evening gown and answer questions. They're only changing it at the national TV level. The state, Michigan, has come out in the articles I read, and it stated that the Miss Michigan pageant will still have swimsuits. It'll still be a beauty pageant.
But isn't it still a beauty pageant with the dresses? A pretty dress, a girl can wear a pretty dress. Like, if I was a woman and beautiful, like these women are, I wouldn't want to just go out on the stage and walk down the aisle on the stage in front of all these people and judges in a bikini, a two-piece swimsuit. On national television, I would be embarrassed almost. Now, I would probably know I have a beautiful body, but why would you want to display that on national TV? Don't you want to leave a little bit for maybe when you're on the beach with some friends or your boyfriend or whomever it may be? I mean, I kind of get that. And they still have the dresses. That's why I'm not totally opposed to them getting rid of this as part of the beauty pageant. So,
Vito, it's what it was. I mean, this is what people want to see in a beauty pageant. They want to see beauty.
So don't you see it, though, in a dress?
You can see all
the girl still looks beautiful, right? The woman still looks beautiful.
Each competition had its own department, and it had the evening gown portion, which got ratings. You had the swimsuit portion, which got ratings. You had the personality with the questions that got ratings, and you had different parts of the competition. So why change it? Why de-emphasize the beauty part of the beauty pageant? You can say that the ratings could be maybe enhanced with different aspects of it, but a beauty pageant inevitably results down to how visually stunning is the young lady
in a dress,
in a bathing suit as well, because women wear bathing suits.
We can know the woman looks beautiful. Well, come on, we're guys, right? We know if we see a woman in a dress that looks beautiful, they're going to look beautiful in a bikini.
What I'm upset with, Vito, is the notion that looking at beauty and rating beauty is a toxic thing. These women are entering into it on their own volition, and they're entering into a contest that also can benefit them. Otherwise, why would they enter it? And so you are actually, I would now predict, with this news that Miss USA is going to no longer have swimsuits, the ratings are going to tank, it'll be off the air, and within, let's say, by the time you're 35, it'll be back. It'll be back in 6-7 years. They might do this now in this political age we're in, but it'll come back. Someone else will pick it up, and we'll get back to the contest that we have. Because here's the thing. Why are you battling at this when you have... Why are you so invested in battling this notion when you got the Victoria's Secret that does huge ratings on their lingerie line that's on TV, the fashion shows? You got all these Instagram models that are taking photographs, and models that women are getting empowered to get paid for by, advertising companies and using their beauty to sell things. It's not going away. So what is really the purpose? Men are going to look at women in beauty contests always with an eye for how beautiful she is, what does she bring to the table. But it shouldn't be the entire thing. It shouldn't just be evening gown and swimsuits. No, it should be the total package, which I like. 4 scales: community service, intellect, beauty, and, beauty ratings, and maybe another one, scholastic achievement, or whatever other rating you want to include to make the contest well-rounded. But you can't take out the beauty in the beauty contest. Otherwise, it's not that anymore. Or if you're going to do it, then why didn't it trickle down to the
lower
pageant?
levels? The state level competitions. Well, it probably should have been. It probably should have trickled down to that level, because why were you making these girls, younger girls, get into these bikinis and swimsuits at the statewide level, right? And then at the national level, we don't have them doing the same thing. Shouldn't it be uniform throughout? So I'm totally aligned with you when it comes to that. Now, to take, a serious topic and make it a little bit funny, I'm going to say this. So we have this kind of a pageant. How about a Mr. Little Person pageant that I could participate in, and maybe I could win something here? Finally win something, Doc.
Well,
come on, man.
You want to...
Did you see that one coming? You probably didn't see that one coming out of my mouth.
I'm a little bit floored by that.
You're stunned. Yeah.
We can do it here. You want to be...
Well, you're going to line up guys in a...
Yeah. No,
we can do it here. Well, I want the pageant. What do you mean a pageant?
We can
Hey,
do.
tell me what you mean.
Meaning that if you want to, don swimsuits and wear a number and wear, you can have.
How about you and I both come in? We record a podcast in swimsuits. What do you say? No. Would you do it?
I don't
What
have
would
a
it
swimsuit
take for
body.
you to do it, though? No, I know
To
you don't.
record it in a swimsuit?
Yeah.
Maybe next year we'll do it. Maybe
No, I'm
around,
not going to have no.
maybe
I'm
episode
saying,
150. Maybe in a year or so with a beach body, I can do it. Why not?
just do it now. You don't like your body? Come on.
I'm still
not going to body shame you.
I'm still in the weight loss phase, Vito.
I know you're doing well. How are you doing, by the way, with that?
It's going well. I think I'm down 10 pounds still, kind of plateaued. A little too much coffee, a little too much sugar in my diet, but I enjoy eating still a little bit too much. But the pop has been cut down significantly, exercising a lot more, feeling good. But, like everybody else, stress and emotional eating and eating too much junk food late at night.
It happens, man. But
It does.
I mean, really quick, my last serious point about this conversation we just had is that I believe they show enough beauty in their dresses that they can still look beautiful. And why do you? And trust me, I like a woman in a bikini. I'm not going to lie to you and say, "Oh my, I can't look at that girl if she's in a bikini." I mean, I'm not like that. But I'm saying for the sake of this competition, why do they? Why did they start that in the first place? That's what I would ask. Like this pageant founder, person that founded this competition. Why did they have the women? I mean, I know the reason probably already, but it's probably, the thing is, the reason why they probably started it is a bad reason because it's like a, chauvinistic reason, misogynist, because you want to see the woman in a bikini and just like gawk at her. See, that's not a good enough reason. Now, that's probably the true reason why it was started, too.
Maybe in terms of you and your little person contest, maybe you could do maybe more, something that is more empowering. Maybe you could do a bodybuilding pageant where you can flex a little bit. We'll get you all bronzed up.
Oh, I don't want to be bronzed. I just
what?
line myself up for this. I don't want to do the bronzing, but maybe one time for the sake of this little thing that we would do. But I'm not a bronzer. I don't like anybody in bronze. I don't know why anybody does that.
And then Vito, the other part that's ridiculous is there are major media entities that utilize women in empowering ways, but are also risque. Look at Barstool Sports.
Barstool's a different entity, though. They just expose it totally. They run with it. They don't care about the repercussions.
Right. They have an Instagram account called Chicks in the Wild.
Yeah, just beautiful women that they
have women doing things. And so if you're going to try and eliminate that, I just think it's a losing battle to take a pageant and try to go down that road. I think Gretchen Carlson and her current endeavors is going to take this pageant to the ground,
think
and
so?
it's going to be eliminated. It won't be watched.
Well, ratings-wise, it's going to tank because she's taking a moralistically high ground to kind of avoid women from being gawked at when they're lined up, taking part in this pageant, walking in their bikinis and swimsuits. And yeah, I think the ratings will tank, but I think it's not about the ratings. The thing is that when the bottom line is hurt after a while, right, then she might flip course, right?
But
there might be the reverse.
Without
course.
ratings, there are no dollars, and with no television,
now they need the dollars. You're right. So would they? You're already saying you're like predicting it right now. How many years will it take for them to reverse course?
Three
really,
years.
only 3. I'm going to say longer than that.
Okay.
I'm going to say you said like 7 originally. I'm going to say like 7.
Okay.
7 years.
7 years of this new style.
Of this new style without the swimsuits.
Okay. Now to switch gears, a topic I want to get to talk to you about because I know that you have a lot of information. You're dialed in to the Michigan fan base. Why is it that I'm getting a notion on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast when the Pistons have this search, and I know Dwayne Casey is a leader in the clubhouse, and by the time this comes out, he could already be named the coach, but a name that was brought up last week, a prominent name who was a strong candidate for the job to become the Pistons head coach was Michigan basketball head coach John Beilein, and it sent a fury through Michigan's fan base, and people are like, no, that's terrible. Why would he take the job? Why would he leave right now? I would not support that decision. And I was just dumbfounded by that reaction. So many people strongly messaged and said, oh, that's clickbait. That's not real. It's not realistic. Why would John Beilein take these interviews? Why would he have multiple interviews if he wasn't at least entertaining the notion of more money, more prestige, maybe even a little bit more of a personal goal for him to become an NBA champion? I was just a little bit disappointed in some of the reaction of Michigan fans kind of being a little bit selfish at the notion that John Beilein would leave the vaunted and hailed Michigan University.
Hail to the victors. But you know what? I think this. He has the right to interview for an NBA head coaching gig, but why the Pistons head coaching gig? You are setting yourself up for failure. But I think really he had the right to. He has the privilege to, the accomplishments, the credibility, the resume to interview for an NBA head coaching gig. So these U of M fans that were up in arms and got their panties tied up in a bunch, per se, Well, what are they thought? Where are they coming from? They have no right to say that about John Beilein trying to better himself and honestly trying to better himself with a new contract from Michigan. This is just a ploy, I think, to get himself more money in his next contract with U of M.
Do you
right?
think so? Many people say that's not in John Beilein's character, but
I think,
it's smart.
his agent's
It's smart.
probably telling him. Think about it. If we had agents too, like if I had an agent, I might not be the guy to do that. I'm not looking for the top dollar, but guess what? If my agent's whispering or telling me that, hey, you got to go do this, guess what? He's my agent. So unless I fire him, I'm going to go do it. And I think it makes sense to try to get the top dollar in your next contract. And he's deserving of it. Look at what he's done in this short period of time. And really throughout his whole entire tenure with the U of M basketball team. And then you compare him to Jim Harbaugh, and there's no comparison whatsoever. Harbaugh's making all this money, and Beilein deserves to get paid even more than Harbaugh. That's how much Beilein has accomplished thus far as U of M headman of their basketball program. So I think he has a right to go and get the top dollar, and I have nothing wrong with it at all.
Nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong with it. He has a right to better himself. Why not? He's proven, he's accomplished. He has a right to go out and do that for himself and his family.
What portion of the fan base do you think would be upset if he left?
Petty people. Butt hurt people. I love that phrase or word. Butt hurt. I mean, I don't know. I think it's a small sect of the U of M fan base. I think it's like 20 to 25% of the U of M fan base. I don't think it's that much or the majority of the U of M fan base. I mean, what do you think? Do you think it really is?
I'm just reading online, and many people are saying, look, those that are reporting that John Beilein is seriously considering this, it's just clickbait, that it's not realistic. He's going to be firmly entrenched. This is just probably an opportunity for him to interview, get some knowledge about great opportunities that he could take advantage of, and that most likely this is an opportunity for him to further leverage himself, like you said earlier, to get a big-time contract. But right now, as it stands, as we're recording this, the leaders in the clubhouse are Dwayne Casey and John Beilein. And another name has recently entered the fray, and I'll look it up here. But I say right now the best candidate for the job is not John Beilein. He would do probably a decent job.
I think he would do an all right job, actually.
I think the leader in the clubhouse is Dwayne Casey. I think that he is the most qualified NBA Coach of the Year with Toronto, and there are some talented individuals with the Pistons that might need just a different level of coaching. And if Dwayne Casey can at least get him to the postseason a couple of years consecutively, I think that's the guy for the job. John Beilein, there might be an adjustment period, and you never know with a college coach how NBA talent with their egos, how they're going to respond to him.
I would say he would be fine, though. I think he's more than fit for the job. I think he might even be more fit for this Pistons position than Dwayne Casey, because we've already run the gamut, the gauntlet, right, with Dwayne Casey. We know what he's made of. I don't think he's anything special. He's a good head coach, but is Beilein a better head coach? You have to ask yourself that, Doc. Is Beilein a better head coach than Dwayne Casey? I think Beilein's proven more. Now, at the NCAA D1 level, not at the professional level in the NBA, but Beilein has proven a lot and a lot more at that level than Dwayne Casey has proven at the NBA level. Even though the Raptors were the number one seed, won the Eastern Conference, he won the NBA Head Coach of the Year from his peers. Did a great job, incredible job while on the job with the Raptors, but you could argue that Beilein's done more and done more with less at that level of competition collegiately than Dwayne Casey has ever done at the NBA level, even with the Raptors when he's showcased some good coaching ability too.
The third name in the mix is Ime Udoka.
Yeah, try pronouncing that, right?
I-M-E, last name spelled U-D-O-K-A.
Yeah, it looks like Udoki. I don't know, man. I just think of that. But yeah, it's going to be a hard one to pronounce, so hopefully he doesn't get hired, because imagine us trying to pronounce that too. And the media, man. Good luck to us.
Who do you want to be the Pistons coach before we get to our featured guest this week, Mick McCabe?
It's not realistic, but actually out of those candidates, I said it already, kind of, was hinting at it, John Beilein.
Oh.
But he's not going to take the job, probably. He's not going to get the job. Let's say, I think it's more likely, though, he doesn't get the job than him not taking the job. I think that's fair to say. I think he actually would take the job. If he's paid enough money, why not? Even though it's the Pistons and you're not going anywhere with the Pistons in the near future, right? Isn't money king? Don't they say that, Doc?
What would be his ceiling as a coach for the Detroit Pistons? Maybe a couple rounds in the playoffs. Would you even think that the goal would be championship? Or
no.
I think the next coach is just a stopgap because of the perils of the financial difficulties and the roster with the way it's made up and the limitations without a draft pick. You're looking at least 4 years until you have maybe even a dream of championship contention.
Well, I think, honestly, that you might even just let him linger with the team struggling, give him some years, and you let him kind of see the team develop in front of him, and then maybe he coaches his team to high levels of success. Eventually, you got to give him a long rope. That's the thing. You got to give him, 4 years that Van Gundy had? You got to give him 4 to 5 years to allow things to develop. And then maybe things do come to fruition. You win more than a first-round series, too.
All right, let's take our first time out. We'll come back with special guest, featured guest of this podcast, a great interview that I'm looking forward to, Mick McCabe, the new inductee into the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame. I know you're going to do a great interview. I want to get a sense of what's it like, covering high school sports for all those years, his great reputation, and being inducted. It's always a good feeling when you're recognized, and I know you'll get a lot of good, pertinent information. Mick McCabe, next on the Two Bad Hombres podcast. Thanks, everybody, for your continued support. We greatly appreciate it. If you've liked what you've listened to, if you like the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, for whatever reason, the great guests, the funny banter, the sarcastic nature in which we cover sports, thank you so much. The reason why we've been able to keep the office lights on, the microphones hot here in our Sterling Heights studio is because of your support. Free and easy way to support us, go check out our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. You can find out what show airs when. You can take care of all your online shopping needs by making one quick stop. If you want to go on Amazon, you can click through the banner at our website. Thank you so much. We wouldn't be able to record weekly podcasts. We're almost at 1,000 podcasts that we've recorded out of this office, and it's been a privilege. And the free and easy way to support us, go check out our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com.
And it's longtime Free Press, prep sports writer, and soon-to-be Michigan Sports Hall of Famer, Mick McCabe, now joining us on Two Bad Hombres for some fresh feedback. Mick, how are you doing?
I'm just peachy.
Well, you're always peachy. I know that. I almost thought that you wouldn't do this interview with me, too, on this podcast because you're going to be a Michigan Sports Hall of Famer. So I'm glad you're actually doing this with us this week.
Yeah, well, anything for you, Vito.
Well, awesome. That's awesome to hear. And congrats to you on the honor, soon to be inducted into the 2018 Michigan Sports Hall of Fame class. And, Mick, with that being said, I got to ask you, what does this mean to you?
Well, it means an awful lot because I'm usually on the other side of the street on this. My job has been to write about people who are getting into the Hall of Fame. Usually the only way I ever get into a Hall of Fame is with a ticket. and to be, honored, to be in the same thing with Al Kaline, Gordie Howe, Barry Sanders, Lem Barney, Dave Bing, it's amazing to me.
So I got to ask, I'm a aspiring journalist. I like to write myself. Well, what does it take to be a Hall of Fame caliber writer?
Oh, I don't know. I never thought of myself as a Hall of Fame caliber writer. I was just a guy who tried to do his job every day and tried to give a maximum effort every single day. I have seen guys write stories and get them done as quickly as they can, and just to get them in, just to get done with it and get out of there. And my philosophy was that in addition to the Free Press, I'm writing for scrapbooks. I know that every story I write about these kids, it's going into somebody's scrapbook. And people are going to read it for the next 30, 40, 50 years. His kids are going to read it, or her kids, and their grandkids are going to read it. And I would hate for them to read it and think, boy, that guy did a really crummy job and really didn't try. So I tried to try every single story I wrote.
And I love your nickname, your pseudonym with the Free Press, the Son of Swami. I just love that moniker. Now, where did that come from? You got to tell us here.
Well, first of all, Hal Schramm was the Swami.
Okay.
He was the Free Press high school writer before me, and he would do his picks under the Swami. And I started working with Hal in 1970, and when he retired and then passed away, they thought it would be, I should carry on, and Son of Swami just sounded kind of right. And so we went with Son of Swami, and the SOS thing just goes from there, and here we are.
It's catchy. I love it, and I love your humor. You have a great sense of humor, your wittiness, too, that you bring in all your prediction columns/articles that you do for the Free Press, every single Friday with the football season. And the names that you come up with for these high schools, too. I just love all of that stuff. And where does your wittiness come from, Mick?
I have no idea. I think I've been influenced by an awful lot of people, who worked at the Free Press, and the nuns didn't think I was very funny. They smacked me around a lot in elementary and high school, so maybe that's where it started. And but they didn't find much humor in my humor.
No, not back then, at least. Now everybody
No.
is. So that's a good thing, since you began your profession. And I read that you started working at the Free Press in 1970. Is that true?
Yeah, June 3rd, 1970. Yep. So this is kind of like the beginning of the 49th year.
And how much has the journalism industry changed since your very start in the field?
The change has been remarkable. Back then, the sports department was really a noisy place because all we had were typewriters, and then we had the Associated Press wire and the United Press International wire, and then we had a horse racing from whatever track was running. We'd get all those horse racing results, and those were all just typing. We didn't have any computers, so when I went to a high school football or basketball game, I'd have to race like crazy, come back to the Free Press, write the story, and that's how it got in. If I was a ways away, like up in Flint covering a game, I'd have to dictate it to somebody. Now we have computers, and we don't have to go in the office very often. And the stories get from our computer to the Free Press in a matter of seconds.
And from my knowledge, there was no Twitter back then either. I mean, Twitter is just...
no Twitter back in... Yeah, thank goodness.
Right? I mean, what Twitter has done to the industry, and what do you think of Twitter yourself?
I love it, actually. It's a great way for, like in the morning, the first thing I do is check my Twitter thing, and I follow a lot of writers that I like, and that's what we do is we post our stories on Twitter. So it's the one place to go for me to read a lot of writers, and I can find out a lot of information just from going through my Twitter account.
So you've covered prep sports and college sports for all these years now at the Free Press. Did you ever get offered the chance to cover a pro sports team as a beat writer?
Well, in 1979, I went and covered the Tigers. I covered them at home for 1 week and then did a road trip with them for 2 weeks out to, we went to Kansas City, Seattle, Anaheim, and Oakland. And when I got back, I said, that's it. I don't ever want to do one of those. And it is no coincidence that our first child was born 9 months after I got home. I didn't want to be with all that travel. And, it was covering high schools was a really good way for me to be around my kids more than some other writers had the opportunity to do. And so it worked out very well that way.
Now, Mick, John Macaroon here. One of the bigger stories that you covered was the Ed Martin story, and you've documented that as probably the biggest story that you were part of. So take us through that, because initially, you weren't part of that story, but you came on board, and then you recognized that Ed Martin wasn't just this good-hearted individual. It turned into one of the biggest stories in the history of college athletics. Can you take us through that process and the way that story came about?
What happened was we got a tip that our Ed Martin was connected with Michigan and giving money to players. And Jeff Taylor was the first guy on the story, and we needed a corroborating source. So they called me up. Owen Davis, deputy sports editor, says, hey, can you get someone to talk about Ed Martin to confirm all of this? So 15 minutes later, I called back. I said, yeah, here it is. They said, wow, okay, you're on the story from now on. So I had several sources, and we went to those people and talked to them, and that's how we developed our story, was with people I had known through the high school and college ranks. And one thing led to another, and we got the story, and we got several stories out of it, in fact. And of course, Weber denied everything, and Ed Martin, I mean, he wouldn't even come out. What was funny is Maurice Taylor was a big part of the story too, and we went out to make her, because he was living with his aunt. His aunt was the one who was responsible. She was his guardian, and Jeff and I met at this gas station just up the block from where Maurice Taylor's aunt lived, and we saw a car pull up in front of her house, and I said, "Yeah, that's probably Ed Martin right there." And then the guy gets out. I go, "Oh my God, it is Ed Martin." So we drove. We got to the house. We're knocking on the door. They were closing windows, putting shades down. We're knocking and knocking, and then she, 5-10 minutes later, she finally comes to the door, and she's got like a bathrobe over her clothes, and she's trying to pretend like she just woke up. And we asked, can we speak to Ed? And she goes, "What?" And she goes, I said, "Ed Martin, he's not here." I said, we watched him walk into your house. And she goes, "No, he's not going to talk to you guys." And it was just kind of funny that day in particular. And we got a lot of good run out of that story.
And Ed Martin, I mean, quite the figure in that story, obviously. I mean, that was a great event, I bet, for you to cover, and you've covered so many great stories. And pivoting a little bit now to the specialization, this trend of these athletes, young athletes growing up and specializing in a single sport. And I believe you tweeted out a stat that 29 of the 32 NFL draft picks in the first round were multi-sport athletes, actually. So, I mean, I think with that being said, I think I know what your stance is, but I still want to hear about it. And, specifically, what is your stance on these kids that have been specializing in a single sport more and more often lately?
Well, first of all, there's three things that work here. Number one, every kid's parent, mother, father, both of them, they want their kid to get a college scholarship so they don't have to pay for college. Number two, sometimes you run into selfish coaches who don't want to share their athletes. They want them all to themselves. And number three, and this is really happening more and more, you've got these athletic trainers. And quite often, these are guys who went to school, who played college sports, and get majored in something that can't get them a job. So what are they going to do? Well, we're going to be an athletic trainer. I'm going to train your kid. I'm going to take your kid to that next level. So they're selling the dream. And they want the kids, a lot of athletic trainers want those kids to specialize in one sport, so when they're not in that sport and during that season, the rest of the time they're coming to them and paying them money. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. And what they're doing, they're selling the dream to the parents, saying, "I'm going to get your kid a college scholarship." And it's just utterly ridiculous, because we're talking about 1 or 2.1% of kids actually get college scholarships. And if it's not football or basketball, quite often those are partial scholarships. I mean, the NCAA permits 8.5 scholarships for college baseball teams, which means you got to split those things up. And any parent should realize, if they put that much money and effort into their kids doing better academically, because there is infinitely more academic money available to these kids than there is athletic money. But it's so much easier to just write a check and have somebody else get their kid better, as opposed to doing the homework with the kid, checking the homework, making sure they're sound academically.
And Mick, it's student athlete and student first. And, I'm a man that's has been focused on academics, and I'm totally for that. And I think these athletes, these young ones that are traveling year-round, too, for hockey and AAU, it's so mightily expensive, but also they get burnt out. And I don't think these parents realize that often enough either. Right.
They don't realize that, because they think of them, so many of these parents are living vicariously through their kid. It's like this is their chance to do themselves over again. So they're going to make sure their kid, plays sports all the time and specializes. And what they don't realize is the more you specialize, you just keep using the same muscles over and over and over again, and you're increasing the chances of your kid being injured. I mean, Jordan Spieth was a quarterback, a point guard, and a pitcher. And all those movements in those other sports helped make him the great golfer that he is today. He wanted to specialize just in golf, and his mother said, no, you're going to have to play all these other sports too, and it just made him a well-rounded, better athlete.
And Mick, when I think of recent successful local multi-sport athletes and prep sports-wise, I think of Luke Pfromm. I got to bring up a De La Salle guy, being an alum of De La Salle, so I had to bring him up. And what he did this past season, after sitting out from football the previous year and focusing on basketball, he played both basketball and football this year and won a football state title at the D2 level and was great as the starting quarterback of the Warren De La Salle Pilots. Where does that story, Mick, rank among the greatest that you've covered in your years covering prep sports?
Oh, that was a really cool story to do. I can't believe. Did you actually graduate from?
I did. I made the cut. Luckily, Mick.
Unbelievable.
They barely let me go. Yeah.
Upset of the year.
One of the biggest.
Yeah. Luke, and the thing is, Luke, thought he was a basketball player, and he was a good high school basketball player. Thought he was going to be a college basketball player, but he ended up signing with Wayne State for football. So he ended up getting a college scholarship because he played football as a senior. And I think that's a great lesson for these kids to learn. You want to give yourself the most opportunities you can, and playing as many sports as you can will definitely help you with that.
So to let you go here, last question. I've got a two-part question for you, Mick. I know that you're semi-retired. So what are you doing with your semi-retirement time? And also, when are you going to officially call it quits for good from writing?
Well, we've got 3 kids. One lives in New York, one in Chicago, one in Seattle. We'd like to visit them. We have 2 grandsons in Chicago. We have to go babysit there next week. So we do a lot, and our youngest is getting married in Seattle in the fall. So, keeping up with those guys keeps me pretty occupied. And as far as when it ends with the Free Press, that's up to the Free Press. If they want to hire if they have the opportunity to hire somebody and say he's going to do it, then that's fine. It's been a great run for me. But as long as they want me to keep helping out, I'm more than willing to help out, certainly on a part-time basis.
Well, I've thought about this, too. I know you're nearing 50 years on the job, so I've thought about not going to make, the plans for you, but you bowing out after 50 years on the job. What a monumental number and accomplishment that would be for you, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, 50 years would be great. I just, it was 46 and a half full time, and, so this part-time stuff is, it really doesn't count quite as much as being a full-time employee, but it's neat to keep the streak going, that's for sure. And being able to contribute, I did a thing about 3 baseball kids in the Detroit area who all happen to be African Americans, and in a sport where I think the African American makes up only like 8.2% of Major League Baseball. Well, one of the kids, William Inglis from Detroit Western, was drafted in the 5th round by the Angels today. So that's kind of cool too. Being able to do stories like that today, that's pretty neat.
Look at that, Mick. And one of the guys you profiled was actually on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network and on Tigers Talk, Tigers-oriented podcast that I do, Bryce Bush from De La Salle. So I had him on the airwaves and talked to him previously, too. A nice young man, has a great future ahead of him, definitely.
Yeah, I think so, too. A real classy kid. I enjoyed speaking with them a lot, as well as John Malcolm from Detroit Country Day. The 3 of them were all really intelligent, neat kids.
Well, Mick, I enjoyed speaking with you. Great stuff from you. Best of luck the rest of the way, and we'll talk again soon.
I can't wait, Vito.
And that was Mick McCabe of the Detroit Free Press. I can say a colleague to some degree. I love the guy. I mean, he's funny, too. I mean, I asked him about where his wit comes from, because he is witty. Do you ever read his stuff? Because he'll say these names for teams, for high schools, and use like these, just weird names he comes up with, and it has like some kind of meaning behind it, and it's really funny all the time.
Yeah, it's when you check out his Free Press bio, it has a lot of like sarcastic.
Yeah, he's
stuff,
I love sarcasm. You know that, so I love the guy, and he's great. I mean, there's not many writers. There can't be many writers that are in the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame, like we were talking about off there. Mitch Albom was inducted last year, but he's like more than a writer. I mean, Mick McCabe is solely in there for writing, and writing about what? High school sports. Think about it. He's like one of the best of all time, realistically, in writing about high school sports.
No, I think that our first conversation with him was fruitful. I enjoyed it very much so, and he's been part of some big stories as well in the college world, especially around these parts. All right, before we get out of here, I do want to get your sense of the NBA Finals, NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. Many people are kind of looking at both and going, Well, it's kind of a foregone conclusion. At the time of this recording, it's a 2-0 lead for Golden State, and then you got the Stanley Cup Finals. It's at this time it's 3-1 Capitals. So in terms of competitiveness, it hasn't been super competitive as of yet. But some of the contests, many people will say that first game of the NHL Finals was amazing with all the goals, the skating, and people are kind of rating both sports. I've enjoyed both, being a guy that likes sports and competition, but I would give the slight edge to the NHL in terms of excitement and in terms of the fact that you got the Capitals and you got the Vegas Knights playing for the Stanley Cup, whereas now in basketball, you've got the same two teams for the entire length of this podcast network. The same two teams, the Cavs and the Warriors.
Think about it. Wow, I never thought about it.
4 years.
We started in 2013. So pretty much
the entire run.
Yeah, that's sad. How sad is that?
So in terms of competitive balance, it seems like the NBA is really struggling to bring in new teams. But I do like seeing KD versus LeBron. I like seeing super teams. I'm not opposed to what KD did. He went to a great situation for him. And it's nice to see the best teams play, but unfortunately right now, it's just that it's the same two teams. It's not really original. But I've enjoyed watching all the contests. I'm not missing out on anything, but it just seems like if I were to ask the question, which has been better, I would probably tilt it toward the NHL.
Yeah, and you know what? It's more intriguing because you have two new teams. And Vegas came out of nowhere. An expansion team in its inaugural year makes the Stanley Cup Final. Did you see ESPN and many other media outlets picked Vegas to finish what? Dead last in the league? And they make the Stanley Cup Final? I mean, how improbable were the odds of Vegas making the Stanley Cup Final? And we dog my dad. My dad was in Vegas, right when the season started. He could have bet. He could have put any sort of money on Vegas winning it all. Think about it. And think about how much money he would have made. All these people that bet any money on Vegas winning it all and now could possibly see it come to fruition. Now, the day of this recording, Tuesday, the Washington Capitals are already up 3-1. So they're probably going to take it home. I think they do, and I think they're the better team. They deserve it. Long time coming for Alex Ovechkin and that squad, to win it all finally. So I think they get it done. And but I think the Stanley Cup, honestly, has been more intriguing than the NBA Finals, which has been the same old for the last 4 years. And it's historic in terms of a historic super team. And LeBron James, perhaps the best player ever. We don't want to get into that GOAT argument here. But he's number 2, worst case scenario. And LeBron has played great. All these triple-doubles, 40, 50-point performances throughout the postseason this year. But at the end of the day, it's the same old matchup. And I think the NBA is now dying for a new team to emerge, at least from one of the conferences, Doc.
It just has to happen. I mean, I think it will if LeBron ends up leaving, if he goes to Philly, if Boston takes the next step. So I think this era is going to be over. I don't see the Cavs and the Warriors next year. I just need to see a little bit more competition. I'm hoping by the time this podcast comes out, maybe the series is getting close to being even. And the only complaint that I have with the NBA is 2 days off in between.
All these days off. I don't like it either. The Stanley Cup has it right in terms of that.
Every other day.
Scheduling. Why
Every
not?
other
Let's get the
day.
series over with. Don't we want to get a winner?
Yeah.
How long do you want to delay this and drag this out, man? It's being dragged out way too long, in my opinion.
You got it. Great podcast, sir. Thanks to our featured guest, Mick McCabe. Always a fun week of podcasting with you, sir. Very good stuff. Continued success with your work with the Free Press. You're doing great stuff with the podcast, the Free Press, the Prep Sports. You're in the mix as one of the best journalists in town. And hopefully maybe you'll get that mantle. Maybe if Mick McCabe does an in-depth feature further with the network, we can figure out a way to, pass the torch from Mick McCabe to Vito Churko.
Maybe. I would love that.
Pass the torch.
Hey, if you get Mick's stamp of approval, that probably goes a long way at the Free Press, don't you think?
Well, if he showed up on your podcast,
that says something.
It might be a stamp of approval. We shall see.
And we might start doing a podcast together for the Free Press. Be on the lookout for that potentially.
Mick and Vito?
Maybe Mick and Vito doing some free prep sports stuff. Who knows, Doc?
Oh, let's stay in the loop. Maybe
stay in the loop.
You might actually parlay your time slumming it with the Doc into something fruitful.
Even more fruitful. But this has been great. And thank you for the complimentary talk about me saying I'm a great journalist. I really appreciate that. And now I got to get a great haircut in time for my wedding on the day of this recording. Not my wedding. A buddy's wedding that I'm going to. Should be a fun night for me. And we'll recap it on next week's episode of Two Bad Hombres, Doc.
Check it out and the other podcasts as well on the network, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. See everybody later.
Adios.